You're listening to Second Cut. This is the podcast from the Film Magazine where we talk about topics in film theory, history, criticism, or whatever else I say here, because we like to do that. I'm Jacob, and I'm the one who isn't going to state exactly what I think. You're going to have to infer it from my body language and outfit due to my role in society.
I'm Sam. I'm the ghost with the most, baby.
I'm Kieran. I'm the one that, ironically, this isn't his favourite scary movie.
Ooh.
Is Beetlejuice scary? I don't know.
No,
Oh, wait.
We're not actually technically talking Beetlejuice, are we?
We're not.
I was thinking more.
We're talking about... what? Kieran, what are you saying?
Yeah, it is Beetlejuice related, but we're not actually specifically talking Beetlejuice. This is kind of the Beetlejuice warm-up party that with a twist, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, the Beetlejuice warm-up party, which... How many of us are seeing that, by the way? I'm not. So let me get that out of the way.
I will be seeing it. Probably not this opening weekend, though. I'll get to it. But...
Yeah, I might see it. Yeah.
Cool.
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just updating our socials to
look,
show that we're live.
This has been in the works for like at least 30 years, going on for 40 years. This sequel, you know, it's been a long time coming, which is why I'm amazed that Keaton wanted to come back for it at all. Really, so he'd just going to put that one to bed completely. But yeah,
I don't know what the size of his paycheck was, but obviously it was decent enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about Beetlejuice or Tim Burton. We're talking about that the actors in Beetlejuice are in other movies. So we're talking about those movies instead. It's also like Michael Keaton's birthday, right? Happy birthday, Michael Keaton.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we saw that when we were scrolling through birthdays, trying to think of topics. They wouldn't let me pick random YouTubers, so we're watching real movies instead.
Real movies, whatever they are.
Yeah. But Sam, do you want to talk about your history with Beetlejuice, even though it doesn't really relate to the topic of the show?
Yeah, I mean it's one of my favorite Tim Burton films. I've loved it since I was a kid. I probably watched it when I was a bit too young. It may be my first Tim Burton film. I may have seen it before Batman. I can't remember. They were probably quite close together. I saw them both for the first time. Sometime in the mid-90s. I've always really liked it. Kind of slightly anarchic, kind of supernatural black comedy with some cool stop motion effects and great production design. So yeah,
it's like Tim Burton that did this, and 10 years afterwards you got the Frighteners. You know,
yeah,
they have. You love to do a kind of bordering on horror thing, especially with things like Ghostbusters as well. You know, you could put all of them in like a kind of black comic supernatural horror comedy kind of thing as a festival lineup.
Yeah. Plus, I love any piece of fiction that has like the afterlife as like a slightly ineffectual bureaucracy. You know, it's very like Terry Gilliam almost, or like A Matter of Life and Death or something like that. You know. It's good.
Yes.
Imagine if you'd done that. You can only do that now. Like caveman times, it won't work, will it?
Yeah, that's true.
Unless it's like some weird kind of Flintstones episode.
Yeah.
Also, Beetlejuice is a legacy sequel, and Kieran, you're the only one doing a legacy sequel. I guess we could have done that. But Sam, do you think there should be a Mr. Mom legacy sequel?
Well, they did a TV show of it afterwards with a completely different cast. I mean, it was from that era when studios greenlit movies only with the promise, if there was a promise of a TV series to kind of, milk afterwards. So
naturally.
But I was going to say, how many series did it run for?
I don't know off the top of my head.
2 episodes, didn't even get past the pilot.
I get the impression it's possibly quite short-lived. Let's have a look.
Probably, thank God.
1 season, 11 episodes.
In which case, it's incredibly modern. It only survived for 1 season before getting cancelled.
I know. We've all picked a member of the Beetlejuice cast, and I'm going to look at a bit at what they did before and kind of, I suppose, what what kind of a draw, are they, as a performer, and kind of, what their kind of specialties and so on. So, yeah, I picked Michael Keaton, which amazingly, I can't remember how many. He's only on screen in the original Beetlejuice, I think, for about 10 minutes. It's a bit like it's a bit like about Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs, or Darth Vader in New Hope. It's just,
or Tron.
They're
Kevin Spacey in Seven, or The Untouchables.
Their presence kind of looms large, like over like the full film, and their few scenes are very memorable. So you kind of remember them actually being in it.
Well, I mean, it is named after his character, so
yeah.
Apparently, he originally they didn't like the name, and Burton, like as a joke, suggested Scared Sheetless, and they thought about running it.
Yeah.
I kind of half wish it was called Scared Sheetless.
I mean, apparently, because it was quite basic and kind of not a lot to him on like the page. The character is very much like a generic scary ghost bad guy. Apparently they first was making him kind of vaguely Eastern European at one point for some reason. So
Tommy Wiseau is.
But yeah, basically Keaton came on board and basically made the role his own and kind of gave him all these new kind of quirks and kind of his kind of unique kind of manic energy. I mean, that's one thing that marks Keaton out. Whatever role he does, whether it's like he's in like a serious drama or a comedy or a superhero movie, he does bring this unique energy. It's like cold spring. It's like there's always something below the surface, like Red's kind of burst. He's quite an interesting screen presence, I think.
Even when he's at the Oscars, getting attacked by Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito.
Yeah. So Michael Keaton, fun fact, real name Michael Douglas.
We know that's unfortunate.
He had to change the name.
Change his name, yeah.
Gordon Nope.
So he's a Golden Globe winning and Academy Award nominated actor, born September the 5th, 1951. And it's really weird to say this. Have you ever noticed this? So it's one thing to think he's 73. Okay, you think, okay, yeah, he's been around for a while. That kind of makes sense. But to say he was born 73 years ago, it makes it sound a lot further in the past, doesn't it?
When was his 73? So what's that, 51?
Yeah, 51, yeah.
I to be honest, I think it's getting to the point for all of us where we're losing track of what dates actually mean in relation to how long ago we think things are.
Yeah. So he's about as old as a lot of Hitchcock's like biggest films, they did in the early 50s, So.
Older,
Yeah. So he's known for like he starts out doing quite comedic kind of supporting roles from the late 70s onwards. Where his career really kicked into high gear with his collaborations with Tim Burton on the two Batman films and Beetlejuice. So he did Beetlejuice first, which was again a bit of a breakout role for him. And then Burton said, "Oh, I want to work with this guy again," and immediately wants to cast him as Batman. And everyone hated that idea. The studio kept threatening to kind of derail the project. So how can you get this comedian in to play this to lead a superhero movie? And Burton kept saying, "Oh, just wait and see. He's got something. He's got this. He can make it work." And he's right. I mean, for me, God, maybe I should have done Batman for this instead of Mr. Marvel. but he's for me, he might be the best in the suit, but he's probably for me the best Bruce Wayne, because he sees that he's got that kind of edge of slight twisted kind of edge to him. And it's like there's something dark there, but he's also quite funny. He kind of plays like the rich buffoon really well. I was thinking that scene, where he's sitting down to eat with his with Vicky Vale, and they're opposite ends of this massive table.
Yeah.
And she says, "Do you like eating in here?" And he goes, "I don't think I've ever been in this room before."
It's I mean, for the modern people, Christian Bale, I mean, as for all Pattinson and Affleck and that, Christian Bale had a kind of suaveness to him that you'd probably have if you're trying to make a billionaire likable. But Keaton had just kind of like an oddball charm about him.
I think I've seen I can't remember who wrote about it. I saw a review of like a retrospective review, and they described him as he looks like a billionaire who just lives on his own and never talks to people.
Yeah.
It's like when he is forced those social situations, he's just so out of his depth.
Yeah. Whereas Christian Bale's Batman was somebody that's used to being in the parties and having to communicate and work the room and being the center of attention in order to get kind of the business deals done. But Keaton's like, and actually coming on to Mr. Mom, which we probably should do. I guess we can talk about Keaton the later parts of the career. But Mr. Mom, when I was watching it, the reason to watch this is Michael Keaton. Like in the nicest way, the film would be god awful if it was anybody else but Michael Keaton.
Yeah. I mean, since but obviously Batman, which became a megastar. I mean, he wasn't top billed in like the original Batman. Jack Nicholson was, but he was top billed in Batman Returns, despite the fact they still had some other big stars competing for the.
Well, I mean, the reason that Jack Nicholson was top billed is because that was one of his stipulations for signing on.
Yeah.
It's like I will be in this movie, but I will be top billing.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit like Gene Hackman back in the day with Superman as well, wasn't it? So since in the year since, he's sort of become more known for like more dramatic roles, very kind of intense kind of performances, things like Birdman and Spotlight. But he's still done like the the bigger blockbuster films, for the pay, I presume for the paychecks. But things like Dumbo and Spider-Man Homecoming.
Well, I mean, Dumbo he would have done because it's Tim Burton.
Yeah, but even in those, I think he's still an entertaining presence. He's always worth a watch. Even if possibly he's not on his A game. So Mr. Mom was his first. Well, he kind of had a succession of kind of breakthroughs where kind of each time kind of his style got a bit bigger, but kind of surprised people like a few times in a row. So he did the. He did Night Shift in '82 with Ron Howard, where he was a supporting role as it's like an eccentric kind of mortician's assistant, which got noticed for this Mr. Mom, which in '83, and then obviously on back of this, he eventually got Beetlejuice and later Batman. So this is the story of a Jack Butler who's he's an automotive engineer who's basically unceremoniously fired, although his boss is quick to point out, "You're not fired. You're technically furloughed," but he's out of work, and stuck at home. So he's stuck at home with his 3 kids while his wife kind of gets a new kind of gets a new career launch, and starts she's like an advertising executive, and then she gets a big boost of her career when she gets some good books of this executive and gets to fly around the world and gets to be important and fulfilled professionally and everything like that.
How weird is it that a woman has a job and the husband takes care of the kids is the premise for a bizarre comedy.
I know, and they keep hammering that point home. I mean, this is there are a few movies like this in the 80s. They're called like role reversal comedies. So there's this one. There was Baby Boom, which I've never seen, and there's 3 Men and a Baby, which is probably the biggest of them. But yeah, it was apparently a joke that just kept on getting funnier. The idea that these guys are at home looking after kids and changing diapers and doing the grocery shopping. Wow, how lucky!
The trouble is that is the entire joke. There is nothing else to they have no other ideas. This is the joke.
Yeah. I mean, I will say this for it. It's the script's all right. I think the actors kind of do a good job of it, and there are a fair few kind of quite memorable lines. Where he, I mean, there's no scene like before he's fired, and he's just talking to his colleagues at the car factory, and he's trying to make a point, about perseverance, because they're not doing very well. The company's like on downward spiral. He's making a metaphorical point, using Rocky, like the Rocky movies as an example. So, I was watching a Rocky movie with my wife the other night, and I was thinking this, and this, and his colleagues just aren't taking the point that they're obsessed over. But which Rocky was it? Was his manager alive or dead? Who was he fighting? So, that's not the point.
And then later they use the music as he does a little kind of montage of pulling his life back together again midway through the film.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a fair few kind of movie references usually with the soundtrack. So like his wife Carolyn calls the vacuum cleaner Jaws because it's got a mind of its own. It just eats everything, and it's accompanied by the Jaws theme. And then there's like a scene where he's racing his wife's boss, like a sort of like a
comedy kind of garden Olympic kind of triathlon obstacle course kind of thing.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah,
it's almost like a sports day that you get the parents to participate in the obstacle course race.
Yeah. So he's doing that, and it goes into kind of slight slow motion, and they play the Chariots of Fire theme. So
it only come out a year or two beforehand, so they must have been very quick to get the rights to that.
So Mr. Mom is incredibly postmodern. That's what I'm hearing here. It's just pinnacle.
I mean, so they kind of they keep hammering home these gags. So you have the dad bewildered by grocery shopping and laundry. So he goes to the supermarket and he's knocking his trolley everywhere and bumping into people and knocking things over.
He doesn't understand basic physics because he's a mom now.
No, he loses his kids in the thing and he runs after them.
Yeah. Not only does he lose his kids, but he steals someone else's kid briefly. He accidentally kidnaps a child for a few minutes and then gives it back to a woman. And that's not the kid's mom either.
That's not my child.
Yeah.
I know the second I'm outside of my comfort zone, I just lose all common sense and ability to function. I get it.
I mean, I don't have any to begin with, so let's bring me into it.
Identifiable then.
Yeah. Yep. And then Neil blows up the washing machine and we're putting too much like detergent in it, and there's this like revolving cast of like comedy handymen who keep like coming around the house, So it's like the woman who fixed the TV, the electrician, and some other guy. We see them a few times. They're always just seemingly just coming in at random, just to help, just wandering in and get on with it. And
strangely enough, the gag that gets me the best is because he's obviously stay at home now, he's doing all the chores, he's constantly got the TV on, and there's one soap that he keeps watching that he gets ridiculously invested in, and he turns around at some point and he's like
okay, that's relatable.
You've got to do something about this because all your kind of old mom friends have got me into this TV show. I've started watching this TV show, and the worst thing is I'm invested in it now. And I feel I feel it so much when I was doing subtitling and having to subtitle shows from like 15 years ago. It's like, I don't care about X on the beach, but I still want to know what happened to him now.
I need to know about those cowboy cheerleaders, damn it.
Indeed.
Yeah, I mean, he's got very good comic timing, Michael Keaton, and like just going from like just complete, just wandering around with washing in the house and glancing at it, saying, "Oh God, why would anyone watch that?" Just like that face of derision, and then like 2 scenes later, and he's like, it's just enraptured on the phone to like another mom, talking about it. So
talking to the other mom's kind of funny.
Yeah. Whose kid is it?
There's a moment I remember where he's kind of looking at this going like, and look, he left her, and then it says it 3 minutes later, and it's like, and he's obviously dating him and stuff like that, and it reminded me of there's a bit in the BBC version of Sherlock where he's at home and Watson's going, "I knew we shouldn't have got you into bad TV," because he's just there yelling at like the Jeremy Kyle show, or the equivalent, which is the equivalent of like Judge Judy over there, and he's just like, "No, of course he's not the boy's father. Look at the turn-ups on his jeans," stuff like that, yelling at awful TV, and I was like, "Oh, I feel it so much," but you're engaged regardless.
Yeah. There's nice moment as well where again his wife's boss comes around to pick her up in the limo in the morning because he's that kind of executive, and he's Jack is obviously very concerned about his masculinity and kind of how he's going to appear to another man. Still in his pajamas and his dressing gown, like in the morning. So he sees this guy walking up to the door and kind of legs it out the back, and then comes back, changes to overalls and revving a chainsaw because he just needs to be that much of a man.
Sam, I see here in Wikipedia, it says, meanwhile, Caroline contends with challenges in the workforce. Her maternal and housekeeping instincts jeopardize her position as a sophisticated executive. What does it mean for her maternal and housekeeping instincts?
Yeah, so it's when she's first in like a board meeting, and like they've all had their lunch and they've kind of scattered the wrappers and cups all over the place. She starts tidying them up, and then when she's on her boss's jets, and they're sitting down to a meal, she starts cutting up his steak for him. So just goes into mum mode a few times, but
it's not really. It's like one or two gags, and then it kind of fades out.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't understand how that would jeopardize your job.
I don't think so. I think a few people can laugh at it, a few times, comment on it, saying it's like, what are you doing? But it's not a major thing. I mean, I think Terry Garr is really good in this as well. I think she's a nice match to him. They've kind of got good chemistry together, and she's always been a good, comedic actress. So I think she makes most of this as well. I mean, again, just some of the lines. So he kind of, I kind of work on like the lowest kind of ebb of like his downward spiral. He's just sitting around all day drinking and growing out a terrible shaggy beard, and just not taking care of himself, not washing or changing his clothes for weeks. And she comments on the beard, and he says, "The beard's in its transitional stage now. When it comes in, it's going to look great."
I understand that as well.
Yeah. And there's like, so obviously eventually, of course, he gets it together. He gets the hang of it. Becomes a great dad. And he's really excelling like at home,
arranging poker nights for the moms.
Yeah. By the way, was he a shit dad? Like not paying any attention to his kids in the beginning?
He was. He just didn't know how to work anything.
Yeah, so. You don't really see much of what the home life was like beforehand. Basically, he's tired all the time because of the kids being around. So he's tired going to work and everything, and he's late getting up, and he's falling asleep in the shower. And I think he walks into the shower still wearing his pajamas, which I thought was like a thing about like just to avoid any kind of hint of nudity, but then there is a gag because then you just hear him sigh and then just chuck the soaking wet pajamas like over the side of the shower. He's obviously got taken off. You don't really see much of that. You just left to kind of infer it. That I mean, his kids like him. Just doesn't have much time for them. I don't think. And he clearly doesn't get involved in doing stuff around the house because he doesn't have to do any of it at first. So maybe you need like more of a contrast, maybe a bit more of an arc. He could be a proper deadbeat dad, just rather than a slightly half-assed one, and then becoming dream dad by the end.
I think the problem with that is if you've got Keaton in the main role, you've still got to have Keaton likable. If you make him awful at the start to make the arc, it'd be a better arc, but it wouldn't be as kind of popular a draw, if that makes sense. It's not as appealing.
Yeah, I mean, he's day drinking, but not like to the extent where he's just completely breaking down or anything. That he's not to the extent that he's lashing out his kids or anything like that. He's just becomes a bit of a slob, I suppose. This was John Hughes's second screenplay, apparently. And it definitely has that kind of early John Hughes vibe to me. I think. I mean, it's not set in Chicago for once, but it's got that kind of slightly the kind of dysfunctional family, and kind of it's going to have a happy ending. It's all going to work out, but there's a few kind of hurdles along the way that but not like insurmountable hurdles, just like challenges. They've got these characters got to get past and everything. The film received decent reviews at the time, and it did well at the box office. It got 64 million against 5 million budget. Leonard Maltin and Roger Ebert both gave it 2 out of 4 stars, and Roger Ebert said he described it as a lost opportunity for resorting to cliches rather than finding humour in the characters, as portrayed by the promising and talented cast. And I would go along with that. There's not a lot wrong with the screenplay, and definitely nothing wrong with the performances, but it's it's a little generic, and aside from like a few, the good performances and a few decent lines, I don't think I'm going to remember that much of it. Really, I'll probably go back to it in the future. Michael Keaton has a lot better things to come on the back of this. So, but if you haven't seen it, it's not the. I'm gonna do a Kieran. It's not the worst film in the world.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion is that it's the kind of I'm going to make a comparison here, which is probably slightly cruel and harsh on it. It's the kind of thing that probably might be like an Adam Sandler vehicle or something like that now. And it is essentially brought out of complete mediocrity, even going into this isn't great, I would say, by Keaton being Michael Keaton and essentially dragging it into somewhat decency. And to look at the numbers, the 5 million then is $15,790,000 now, so make it 16 mil equivalent, which is about what I would expect now from this kind of film. And it made in today's money the equivalent of about I think it's 208 mil, something like that. So it made the equivalent of more than Furiosa did. So like put that in your pipe and smoke it.
I mean, this is like, Keaton's still fairly early in his career, but I think you can already see that promise there. He's just he's very charismatic, and he's got like a real kind of good energy to him, and as you say, he kind of livens up even fairly uninspiring material. So maybe this seems a little bit revolutionary at the time in the 80s, but I kind of doubt it. I think they could have gone for it more. Kind of made more of the differences and how society was changing and everything. But
I think
but baby steps to this kind of thing, it probably gave way to like more kind of interesting films.
And I think we also say like dramas and things like that are more revolutionary than kind of like slapstick comedy kind of things, purely because of the vehicle that's put in. If this, if you were putting the same kind of messages into a drama, you go, oh, it's much more serious. It gets right to the heart of the matter. It touches upon these things in society. Where if it's put in a comedy vehicle for Michael Keaton, it might be saying exactly the same things, but you're not going to be touching on those in the same way. A lot of it is where the message actually is rather than the message itself.
Also, oh no, medium's the message is coming in. But also, like, I wonder if there were people who were like, oh, this stupid woke feminist movie from John Hughes, PC culture, trying to make men work and be at home and women take our jobs. Like, surely there was some proto
marigolds cleaning a sink. How dare they? They should be out smoking cigars and making out with the secretaries rather than doing all this stuff.
Yeah. Of course, like a Lecce boss in this. Tries to come on to his wife, and because it was that era. But all credit to her. She just throws a punch. Just takes him out.
Very masculine.
It's a pretty good punch as well. Yeah. Now we know where Hermione gets it from.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to pick Michael Keaton deadbeat dad learns a lesson story, and he's called Jack, I'd probably pick Jack Frost over this. At least you get a terrifying snowman, and that was just a CG, but it wasn't CG. It was just
was that Michael Keaton in that?
That was Michael Keaton, Jack Frost. Yeah.
Wow.
Have you ever seen that video, Jack Frost, if it was a horror film? It doesn't need much. It just needs a scary soundtrack over the original trailer.
They have done a horror version, haven't they?
Yeah. But
there is
the family comedy one though. If it was.
I was going to say, that's confusing me because again, it's Evil Snowman, but it's from the year before as well, and that's what I was getting confused about. I'm like, I didn't realize they were two different movies.
Yeah. I'm talking about the family movie, which it's all right, for what it is.
Impressive.
That's about all I have to say on Mr. Mom. It's not the most substantial film, really.
Yeah, it just kind of exists.
It just slips down,
It's got a funny title.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll go into a movie that's, I mean, a bit more adult, I suppose. A little more complex.
Literature.
But also about social roles for men and women. So there's a connection there. Also starring in Beetlejuice, star of the original movie, Winona Ryder. And I've never seen Beetlejuice, so I'm going to read this description here from Wikipedia. She plays Lydia Dietz, the former goth teen who nearly married Beetlejuice in 1988, now mother of Astrid Dietz and hostess of the Ghost House with Lydia Dietz show. Hoping to keep the first film's essence, Ryder never thought her character would become a mother, but a spinster in the Maitland residence's attic. But Lydia's daughter Astrid justifies such change. So, why was a teen going to marry a demon ghost thing?
You'll have to watch the film to find out.
Yeah, it was some ritual. I think it was a way to get given power or given life, or
yeah, you got to. It's a trick to allow him to escape, kind of thing.
Oh, so it's like Chucky.
Kind of, yeah.
Cool.
A little bit.
Nice.
Yeah. Because Beetlejuice, he's summoned when people say his name 3 times, but then he's cast out again when people say his name 3 times. So he's kind of tied to those rules. So this is a way to escape it, I think, too.
Yeah,
should come back.
Ghosts have to have a finite set of rules in order to stop them doing anything, and normally you can exercise them.
I mean, Lydia Dietz, does have one of my favourite lines of dialogue of all time. A good character moment, and she kind of says, "People fear the strange and the unusual. I myself am strange and unusual."
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also funny to see my character would not have a child. And they're like, well, we have to sell a new movie, so we disagree. Anyway, so that's Winona Ryder. But since Sam went into Michael Keaton's background, I had to quickly Google and figure out Winona Ryder's, because mostly I was just watching hour-long Martin Scorsese interviews about this movie. So I did find
As you would.
I did find a 10-minute Winona Ryder one, so that was nice. But Beetlejuice is kind of the movie where she gained attention. She was born in 1971, so like she was, I don't know, what, 17, 16 when they were making it. Heathers is probably the first movie I would have thought of that she was in that I had heard of. For some reason, I thought Beetlejuice was later. But yeah, big in Heathers, Edward Scissorhands, and Bram Stoker's Dracula, which I did consider doing for this, but I'll save that one.
Who has the worst accent in that, Winona or Keanu?
Keanu. And then then she was in Age of Innocence. So, I mean, she went from one auteur movie to another one to another one to another one. I mean, very solid showing in her late teens, early 20s from her.
Yeah, she did a lot of stuff, but then she also ended up in Alien Resurrection, and you go, ugh.
Was she really?
Yes, this is also when I say when you're in the 4th film in a franchise, you have to really double check, especially if it's a horror franchise, really double check how the other movies are doing, because it's about this time where the movies can start going downhill, especially if they're fairly close together.
She was the android in that, wasn't she?
That is hilarious.
I can't remember. I blocked a lot of it out of my mind, to be perfectly honest.
But
So they had the alphabetic naming sequence, for the androids in the Alien series, which is completely broken by the Prometheus editions. But so went Ash, then Bishop, and then she is Cole, I think. I seem to remember.
Yeah. I mean, Prometheus is set beforehand, but anyway.
Yeah. I didn't expect us to go on an alien tangent.
Then you've got the android David.
Yes.
But then you have Walter, so that one's weird.
By the way, I'm going to use the term costume drama to discuss this. It's a term that I don't love, and Scorsese apparently didn't either. I got to learn that. But like I can't think of another word for this like genre of movie.
Period drama.
But everything's a period drama.
Costume drama, period drama.
Wiki characterized it as a historical romantic drama, so I guess you could call it historical.
Yeah.
Although, to be honest, I haven't read the novel, and I don't know if it was historical at that time, because you've got motor cars, and it's
I know
from
this.
1920.
So it was written by Edith Wharton. So she was living in Europe during World War I, so naturally she became a bit disillusioned, and she missed the simplistic days of her youth in New York's upper crust, and so she decided to write a story that captured that Age of Innocence that she came up in.
I mean, Edith Wharton is an interesting character anyway, because she was a professional writer. She wrote for a living, and there was
she was
a load
Mrs. Dad, basically.
Yeah, essentially, she had kind of various relationships that put financial strains on her, essentially, and a load of kids, and she just wrote and wrote and wrote. And she's very well known for her ghost stories, which is why I'm actually reading several stories in the midst of my research. And somehow, last week, I read an Edith Wharton story.
Nice.
Just like randomly, I picked up an anthology of called Midnight Specials, because it's here, because I'm halfway through it. Which is an anthology for railway enthusiasts and suspense addicts. So they're all stories that take place in relation to essentially to trains.
For railway enthusiasts, that's great.
But they're all stuff that take place on trains. So there's Dickens in there, August Derleth's in there, various people, and there's an Edith Wharton story in there as well. It's like, oh, cool. Oh my God, it's Edith Wharton. Fair enough.
We're gonna say this episode's for Beetlejuice enthusiasts.
Yep.
So. Right after
all the bug addicts going, where are the insects?
Sort of similar to Edith Wharton, she also played Jo March in Little Women the next year, and for those two portrayals, Age of Innocence and Little Women, she was nominated for Oscars. Unsurprisingly, because she's great. She's really. I love Little Women, that 1994 one. I probably should have done that instead, but I hadn't seen this, so I did it. But yeah, every time I watch a costume drama, my issue with period pieces, The Wolf of Wall Street's a period piece. Just like anything that is not in current year is technically a period piece.
I feel so old when new films come out, and it's like way back in the distant decade of the 90s.
It's quite funny because a couple of years ago, Stephen King did the short story Mr. Harrigan's Phone. That then got made into the film, and that revolves around it being somebody that's now in his 20s looking back to being like sort of 10, 15 years ago, and it revolves essentially around a first generation iPhone. It's like, this is a historical piece. I'm like, sod off. Please, go away. I don't deserve this.
God, I didn't realize this episode was going to be the temporal depression episode too.
Yep.
But that's Winona Ryder. She is really good. Apparently she's in Stranger Things. I didn't know that either.
Stranger Things. You haven't seen Stranger Things?
No, because I don't watch things that are nostalgic.
I would say she is the best thing in Stranger Things.
Yeah. Essentially, Jacob, have you seen any version of It, Stephen King?
Oh, and I've seen Spielberg movies.
Okay. Essentially, if you've seen It, change like Pennywise for a D&D monster. Repeat for several seasons.
Also,
it's Amblin and a mix of Stephen King, mixed with a bit of John Carpenter, and just kind of all chucked in a blend.
Well, in the original pitch book or whatever, they specifically state Stephen King, John Carpenter, George Romero, and Toby Hooper. I think. The hilarity, of course, of all that being that George Romero and John Carpenter. Was it George Romero? No, it might have been Toby Hooper.
I've not heard anyone compare Stranger Things to Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
No, it's obviously because Toby Hooper did Poltergeist.
Yeah.
But hilariously enough, he also did a film called The Mangler, which is based off a Stephen King story. It's not good.
This is how I learned Steven Spielberg didn't actually direct Poltergeist.
And then John Carpenter obviously did Christine, based off a Stephen King. So essentially, this is just Stephen King, but they've thrown in D&D instead of the Pennywise, essentially.
Sure.
Instead of the all things serve the beam and the dark tower, it's D&D instead.
That brings it back to Sam, when you said you saw Beetlejuice way too young. It was the movie I saw way too young. And The Godfather.
Curry, just nightmares.
Yeah. So anyway, Winona Ryder was in this movie, The Age of Innocence, which also stars Daniel Day-Lewis and Michelle Pfeiffer, and then a bunch of British people.
It's a stacked cast.
Yeah, and
including Miriam Margolyes.
Okay, I was gonna say, who are you getting to? But yeah, yes, she's really good.
Yes, she is. She's hilarious in real life. Sorry, it's just finally like we've done a movie where I've worked with somebody in the cast. Finally.
Ooh, there we go.
I was running her around Aberystwyth. She was telling me to push her faster to the bathroom.
Were you carrying her on a palanquin?
No,
whatever they're called.
Wheelchair. She's in a wheelchair because she's in her 80s now. She was telling me to push her faster because she really needed a good shit. Pardon the language. That's exactly what she was saying.
Oh, that is amazing.
And I should be pushing her faster because I'm a young, strong man, and I was trying not to bash her into corridor corners.
Yeah. Wow, Kieran, way to brag.
She's known for swearing at Nazis on the internet and going on morning TV and radio and swearing her head off.
Yeah.
Like I said, a bunch of British people, and Robert Sean Leonard for some reason, the guy from House, just shows up at the end,
and Richard E. Grant.
Like I said, it's a lot of British people.
Yeah, what you'll find out now is that in this movie there are now 2 Doctor Who villains, Miriam Margolyes and Richard E. Grant.
But in the Age of Innocence, it's about the manners that are holding back the love story that is happening right before everyone's eyes, but that everybody refuses to talk about. And Daniel Day-Lewis thinks he's being all secretive and sly, but he's not. It's just everybody is too polite to say anything in front of him, and everybody says stuff behind their back. It is very literally Gossip Girl, but in the 1870s.
It's essentially 100 years. It's a Jane Austen movie written 100 years later.
It's so Gossip Girl, in fact, that Gossip Girl has an episode where they put on the movie Age of Innocence as a play, and their lives begin to reflect the real lives of the characters.
Yeah. I think there's a very strong argument about this film where pretty much everyone in it looks the best they've ever looked. This is like peak Daniel Day-Lewis, peak Michelle Pfeiffer, peak Winona Ryder, probably peak Miriam Margolyes as well.
Yeah, aside from Blackadder, maybe.
Yeah.
And Daniel Day-Lewis plays Newland Archer, and he's, for his time, fairly progressive. Everyone around him. So Michelle Pfeiffer comes back home from her marriage to the Count in Poland, and they're all talking mess about her because she's so improper and flaunts the rules of high society. I feel like I need Kieran's posh accent to say that, but
I'm really not posh. That's the thing.
No, but your posh accent that you put on to say,
ew.
Yes.
Matron. Sorry, Sam will get that.
There's because they had dialect coaches, there is like a slight twinge of English accent to Daniel Day-Lewis's performance, because that's just how people talked back then. We have sound recordings and stuff.
That have recently emigrated to the US, so going back, they would have been English if you're the aristocrats. And to be honest, you could set a lot of essentially the sets and go transplanted to England, and you wouldn't know much difference.
Yeah, Daniel Day-Lewis got a weird voice anyway. I don't think a bit like Gary Oldman, we don't really know what his actual voice sounds like because he's such a chameleon.
Does he do fake accents in interviews?
Yeah, well, because he's Irish originally, but then he's lived everywhere, so he's got this weird kind of roaming kind of accent.
I did not know he was Irish.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this has changed everything. Oh my God, it says English actor on his Wikipedia.
Oh, was he born in Ireland? I missed that.
No. He's Northern Irish.
Damn it.
His father's Cecil Day-Lewis.
Yeah, so I thought he was born in Ireland for some reason.
Good God. He's from Kensington.
Is from Belfast, but
there's some Irish person that's very upset with you right now. But yeah, he's engaged to Winona Ryder's character. She's May Welland, and May is sort of the typical high society lady. She knows her role, and she plays it. And she puts on a front of naivete and innocence that I'll get more into Winona Ryder, but I guess that's sort of the core of it. Is she plays that very well. But yeah, at the beginning, she's just sort of, there's no other word to describe her other than like simple, or maybe somebody would say dumb.
There's a line in it that Daniel Day-Lewis has, which is something along the lines of, "It's amazing how such a creative idea could come from somebody this simple," or something along those lines.
Yeah, and there's also the part where she's talking about her, things that she does every day, and he says, "I wanted to come here to get away from that kind of conversation. Oh, you remember when you used to read me poetry?" Like, she's just like the typical romantic rich girl on the surface. And Michelle Pfeiffer is the one who flaunts them. She's worldly. Her parents were bohemians who raised her in a truly bizarre fashion. And then Daniel Day-Lewis, Newland, he's like, well, why shouldn't she be able to divorce her husband? And that's sort of the impetus for the story. Is his boss at the law firm comes to him and says, "Hey, you're married into this family. You're going to use your influence to get her to not divorce this guy, because that's what the family wants. And I'm now telling you that is your task." And so he goes to her and he's like, "Hey, don't divorce your husband." But all of this has to be done very tactfully. He has to talk about the image of the family and how divorce. He has a line that's like, "Divorce is favored in the laws of society, but not in its culture," or something like that. Like, but the problem is, over the course of this story, he's falling in love with her, and he has to express it in very small ways, like going to Boston to sit with her on a bench. And Scorsese, whenever he's talking about this movie, he talks about how, like, walking up behind someone and touching their shoulder, like, that is basically having sex with them in this society. And so he has to shoot it with that sort of mentality behind it, and every camera movement is to emphasize that.
I mean, this is the era where, like, flashing an ankle was the same as taking everything off, basically, wasn't it?
Yeah. One thing about, like, the cape stuff, though, like, one thing that's weird about the Countess is that she treats her maid as her equal, and man, that's weird. Who would do such a thing? Treat a service worker as equal to them? Nobody today, it turns out. People still don't do that. And they're not even that much richer. Yep. Yeah, but no, she's like a nice lady. You find yourself rooting for this couple, even though it would be very scandalous to leave your fiance and then wife for her cousin. Like, they're close enough that at least when she returns, she's sitting in their opera box with May and her mother. So, like, maybe there was some correspondence there or something. There's clearly a closeness between those two. Yeah. And also it's implied that, like, Daniel Day-Lewis grew up with them, too. She says, "Oh, I remember you when we were kids. I liked your brother more than you." But slowly, that changes. Of course, the famous scene is when he very racily unbuttons her her glove, and it is very sexual. Watching Daniel Day-Lewis undo her glove, make out with her wrist, and then they're like, "Okay, fine, we can meet up one time. For what? We're not going to specify it. You're going to have to figure out that we mean sex." But then, do they? That's all I'm going to spoil. I'm going to spoil everything but the end for you. Although it's a movie from 1993. You can't really spoil a over 100-year-old book. Also, a couple of the standout scenes that don't involve Winona, or sorry, not necessarily scenes, but Scorsese's methodology. He wanted to be a painter when he was a kid, but he didn't have the talent for it, or the work ethic, or the brain for it, who knows. And so what he was going for with a lot of the artistic choices in this film was, this is what I would do if I was a painter. And so there's, like, shots of food. You'll have the servants cutting it, and then it dissolves into it being served. And he says he treated those as brush strokes. And then the fades to color instead of the fades to black or white or whatever. He was also thinking about as, like, splashes of expressive paint going into his film. And Also the intro titles, very, very suggestive. Time-lapse photography of flowers.
A famous Saul Bass, obviously, who did a lot of Hitchcock stuff. I was going to say, it's
That's
like
not surprising.
Scorsese is one of these people that's kind of, the more you watch, the more you do actually notice some trademarks, even though he's across like lots of genres. It's like obviously voiceovers, quick montages over voiceovers to kind of transition major scenes. He loves to do push-ins as well of characters, onto their faces, actually quite rapidly. Those kind of cuts to color and things like that.
Third-person tracking shots.
Yeah. Long tracking shots as well. I mean, there's one right at the beginning of the film which feels very much like, is it them going into like the bar or something in Goodfellas, where it kind of goes around everyone. So there are reusing Daniel Day-Lewis, or we would later on at least. There are kind of trademarks here as well, and you can tell it is a Scorsese film.
He's so different in those two Scorsese films. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, Scorsese's films
even though there's no kind of
they're always like really good looking kind of films, because obviously he's just such a kind of a master of the form. But this is particularly, I suppose you call it painterly, wouldn't you? I mean, as you were saying, Jake, with his dreams of kind of his artistic traditional artistic aspirations. I should take most frames from this and just as they are and just hang them on a wall. They're just so
very Barry Lyndon in that respect.
Yeah, and because Edith Wharton, like I was reading that for a long time the book was admired for its attention to detail and like the way that it talked about the interiors and culture of the 1870s, and that's what it was really appreciated for. And it's no surprise that Scorsese just was like, great, thank you for giving me my set design. I'm gonna find people who are experts and know how to like put this all together that is listed in the book. And then Kieran, the thing that you said about his trademarks, really I would just argue that his auteur trademark is, I like to watch movies and then make movies like those movies, because that's what he was doing here. He liked William Wyler's The Heiress and liked Renoir films, so he was like, I'll just do that.
Yeah, and he references Michael Powell and Hitchcock as well. In terms of the way the film looks. He's inspired apparently by Narcissus and Rear Window. So, you can kind of see that. You can see that as like the shot construction. How everything kind of looks like flat, but like really kind of vivid. And kind of distinct. It is pretty much just exactly how you'd kind of construct like a still life. For painting.
I had thought this was a movie that he always wanted to make, like a passion project or something, but no, he just read the book in 1987 and was like, this is my next movie. I'm going to make that. So, there you go.
He put a few in the way first, like Passion of the Christ and Goodfellas, but, he'll get around to it at some point.
Yeah. And so, Michelle Pfeiffer. Winona Ryder. That's the... the role I'm talking about in this movie. She is the sort of tertiary character, because the main couple, as you'll see in the poster, is Daniel Day-Lewis and Michelle Pfeiffer as he kisses her neck very, very racily in the poster, while Winona Ryder's holding a flower over her face, sort of giggling. That is the image that she has to project, and she has a few scenes where she gets to do that when Daniel Day-Lewis comes to visit her and says, oh, I want to move up the wedding, and she's just like, oh, I don't know if we can do that. But then also she has to have the conversation about, do you want to move up this wedding because of another woman? And she thinks it's a different woman from Michelle Pfeiffer entirely at that point. So she is showing in that scene her ability to bring out her dualistic nature as a sort of manipulative person under the guise of naivete. But also, she does archery. She's really good at that. She has fun with it. They take a picture of her, and at the end, you get to see that photo sitting on a little nightstand or something. So, like, she wasn't just, the lady sitting around doing nothing. She had interests, and she had some sort of life that was outside of Daniel Day-Lewis's, but it was very much in the realm of what was allowed. And the movie shows the deep sexism of society. It's on the nose when one of the guys is like, wait, Daniel Day-Lewis, you think women should have equal rights to men?
I mean, this is set in the 1870s, so...
That's true. That's maybe people had that very direct conversation. I don't know.
It's like women's suffrage is still like 50 years away, you know. So.
Yeah, but I feel like people would talk about it then the same way people talk about like racism now, where they're like, I'm not racist, but you know, like I don't think they said stupid. You think women should be equal? Psh, they had more clever ways of ways of disguising that, surely. So that part felt a little silly, but I think outside of the matriarchal figure of what's her name? Mrs. Mingott, played by the great Miriam Margolyes. Margolyes, thank you.
Sorry, I do that because on the first day we had water bottles for all the main cast in this film, and somebody accidentally put Margolyes instead of Margolyes.
Yikes.
And so we had to very quickly go and change that because she wasn't happy.
Well, I think one interesting way that the film is able to sort of subvert its story's portrayal of sexism is the female narrator, which was oddly jarring to me. I guess I don't watch a lot of films that have female narrators.
I'm struggling, even with modern films, to think of that many. There's doesn't happen
Little Women. Yeah, like, and especially because it's a Scorsese film. That may have been why it was so jarring compared to like Twilight or something where I'm expecting it. I wasn't expecting there to be narration, so. At the beginning it is a bit jumbled, and it's giving a lot of exposition. The second time through I was following it a bit better, but because she's talking about Mr. Beaufort, and he's like barely in the movie, but it does a good job of explaining his downtrodden part of society. But anyway, the best scene with Winona Ryder in it is towards the end, where, she is aware of his romance with Michelle Pfeiffer, but she is very subtle in the way in which she's able to navigate discussing that with Daniel Day-Lewis. In fact, even telling him not to, that's not going to be a problem. Don't worry about that. Oh, you don't need to discuss that because I've taken care of it. That bitch is going back to Europe. That's very she does it in high society 1870s terms, but like it's very much like a Real Housewives kind of move. It's very it's great. I love how manipulative her character becomes over the course of the film, or is revealed to be, because she has learned how to navigate this society where everybody is spreading rumors and working behind your back. Trying to maintain their reputation and ruin it for others. So, or, trying to decide whether or not they should be ruined amongst the other people. It's very interesting.
I mean, it is a good looking film, and it's a well directed film. Unfortunately, this is never going to be an area that kind of just genre that grabs my interest. And I find it very hard to connect with kind of period dramas. Like, I have seen Howard's End, which came out the same year. And I kind of watched that, and at the same time, I'm like, I remember I've seen it in the last, 2 years. I couldn't tell you a single thing about it. And this is awkward for me anyway, because Scorsese is somebody whose films I always watch and appreciate, but at the same time, couldn't care less about revisiting. So even something like Taxi Driver, yes, I've seen it. Couldn't give a damn if I saw it again or not. It's like something that I know. I like whenever I watch a Scorsese movie. I mean, I went and watched. Did I even review Killers of the Flower Moon? I definitely watched it at least. And I watched it and went, "This is a very, very good movie." And if I was doing like a top 100 best films of all time, Scorsese would be in there somewhere. Top 100 favorite films of all time, probably not, kind of thing.
I mean, what I will say is Scorsese's done longer films than this that have felt shorter. It's like some of his 3 hours. Our one's just fly by, but yeah, this one is. I'm not going to call it a slog, but you've got to get into the right mindset for it and kind of get enveloped in like the the atmosphere and the pace of the thing. It's I think anyone with like problems with their attention span, you might struggle a little bit with some of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're somebody that loves kind of Downton Abbey and Bridgerton and stuff like that, you're going to watch this and absolutely love it. And I'm not saying this is a bad movie. It's not. It is a very good movie, but I also can't connect. I don't connect with it emotionally.
There's plenty of like entertaining scandal relative to the time it's set in. It's
I was going to say, throw a body in there and maybe I'll be interested in that.
Yeah, my experience with costume dramas is, I mean, mostly auteur works. I'm watching it because it's a Sofia Coppola. I'm watching it because it's
Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, whatever it is. Like I don't remember liking Pride and Prejudice, the late whatever the 2005 or whatever version was.
Well, the BBC one from '95, the Barbie reference.
Like most of the time, I don't. Generally, I would say I'm not going to go for this stuff. I don't watch Bridgerton or Downton Abbey, but I love this. And anytime I watch one that's engaging, Sam, you said interesting scandal for the time. Well, once it did finally absorb me into its world, I was definitely like, oh yeah, he's going to Boston and sitting on a bench. Someone call the authorities, or whatever Phoebe said. Alert the elders.
I mean, if it gets you, it gets you, and I'm really glad that you like it, and not just because it's a Scorsese movie.
Yeah, it's because it's a good movie, and he makes good movies. Like
he does.
Now, I would rather watch this again than watch Cape Fear ever again in my life. So
I forgot he did Cape Fear.
Yeah, it made $68 million on a $34 million budget, and I mean,
doubling it. So
it's probably
with
around,
Scorsese, 110, 120 now, I guess.
It's not really about how much did it make. It's it made money. Cool. You're gonna keep making movies because you're Martin Scorsese, and somebody's gonna give you money. So
equivalent of 148 million now on so probably around a 75 mil budget, making 150 mil now.
Just 10 years prior or whatever, or 13, 14, Apocalypse Now had come out on a similar budget. So with inflation, it was less than Apocalypse Now.
The fact they actually made Apocalypse Now for like the equivalent now of like 70 million is ridiculous. And some of the stuff that's coming out now, and it's like 110 million. You go,
where's the money going?
Well, people got.
In a nice way, have you seen the newest Knives Out? It's cost about 210 million. Somebody's like, did Robert Downey Jr. Did Robert Downey Jr. decide to turn up for this one? Need an 80 million paycheck.
Yeah, it's like people were saying that Coppola's thing was out of control for that, and like there were more expensive movies that year that got made. So people just hate when artistic directors get money for some reason. That's offensive to people who care about the film industry and the business side of everything.
Oh, for Megalopolis, I don't, because most of it is self-funded, isn't it? Essentially, he scrounged the money himself. With
self-funded or funded through loans.
He sold a couple of his wineries.
Essentially, it's a lot of it is. I'm going to say a significant portion of the 120 mil for Megalopolis is he found it himself, which fair play to him. I'll give it that. What I don't like is everyone going, it's a masterpiece. Let's treat it like a glorious thing. Like, did you see his last few movies? Not great.
Same with Costner. Same with Costner and Horizon. I had to remortgage his house. And
here's the thing: if he'd have called it Horizon, I might have gone to see it. You call it Horizon, an American Saga, Chapter 1, and then go, all you people like going to see like sequel movies instead of original movies. It's like, you've called it an American Saga, Chapter 1. I'm now not interested.
Well,
you've made a franchise.
I think in his mind, it's a singular work divided into chapters, as opposed to we're gonna greenlight the sequel because it's a valid product, you know. Like, and I could maybe I'm just interpreting that, but that's how I would look at the way he's framing it.
He's at least made part 2, hasn't he? Made them both back to back, and then part 3 is dependent on how well part 2 does. Which, judged by how part 1 did, probably not going to see it.
No, wasn't it like that?
Yeah. He didn't go, ooh, I made lots of money. How can I capitalize on American Horizon Chapter 2?
Speaking of lots of money.
I was thinking more
capitalizing.
Speaking of sequels in doubt of what they're actually going to feature and if they're actually going to come out.
Starring Jenna Ortega?
Well, apparently not anymore. You know.
Uh-oh.
When she stands up with Melissa Barrera.
That's why they've got. That's why they've kind of backed a massive truckload of money up to Neve Campbell's house.
That and Kevin Williamson.
Yeah.
So
Kieran, how long after a movie does a sequel have to be for it to be a legacy sequel?
In Scream's case, about 12 months. Scream 2 is a legacy sequel. I'm sorry, like they were doing it for anyone else. Scream was Scream and riffing off everyone else, and that was fun and original. But then the trouble with Scream, and Scream is my franchise. Like Scream is how I got into movies. Like in the nicest way, it can be the worst Scream ever, and I'll still hold a special place for it.
Kieran loves Dolly.
I kind of probably wouldn't be sat here and have gone to university to study what I did if I hadn't found Scream at some point. So, even if the movie's awful, I've got to, I will support it. But I will also say the first one is, genius. The second one, the whole point of it is a copycat at the first film. The third film is it's trying to undermine the first film, but also, in it, the film within a film replicates the first film. The fourth film is playing up remakes and therefore remakes the first film. Scream 2022, which is this one, is about legacy sequels or requels, in which case they recreate the first film. And then Scream 6 is a rip-off, essentially, of recreating Scream 2, which recreates the first film. So,
Kieran,
all of the franchises escaped to film 1.
You need to approach somebody about writing a novelization of the first film.
To be honest, you could do that and then just go change vague characters, repeat 6 times, change the number on the front. You have all of the Scream films. There's a weird thing about that it holds the original in esteem. And to be honest, that is kind of what Scream 5 is about. Yeah. So Jenna Ortega is in Beetlejuice. And it was weird because when I looked it up, I went, she's only 21. What the hell? She's been around for years. And it's actually I'm like, what? I would have thought she's at least sort of 26, 27 playing characters about 10 years younger. No, she's genuinely that age.
I just learned that today. I also assumed she was 26, 27.
No, because her first film, and this is the hilarious stuff, hilariously of her. Her first film, she was the vice president's daughter in Iron Man 3, a film everybody forgot existed. Until they forget it existed until they look at Marvel movies ranked in order. You mean
Dr. Doom -2?
Yeah. And then she was in Insidious Chapter 2. Was she? I don't know. I first came across her when my flatmate went, you're going to have to watch You, because she was like, oh, look, book nerd. Like me, and I'm like, thanks for calling me a psychopath.
By the way, he plays the exact same character that he plays on Gossip Girl. Just Gossip Girl doesn't have the narration of I was stalking her. It's just he shows up where somebody was by chance with a lame excuse for why he's there.
I will appreciate the book stuff, and then I think in the first episode of season 3, there's a bit where they walk past a rack of Scott Landon books, which is a reference to Stephen King's story, Lizzie's story, where Scott Landon is her husband in that. But yeah, so Jenna Ortega,
isn't he the guy in Dan Brown novels?
Possibly. So Jenna Ortega was in the second series of You, which is where I first came across her, which is 2019, which is only 5 years ago, which is shocking. So she was 15, 16, maybe 17 at the time. But then since then, like she's done like a couple of bits. So in sort of the mid 2000s when she was sort of, early teens. But then since sort of last 5 years, so she was in the sequel to The Babysitter, which amazingly enough is a modern slasher I haven't seen. And then essentially she did bits, but then really Scream is where kind of she came to Hollywood prominence pretty much. Along with X, I will say. Studio 666, maybe not.
Yeah. I mean, this and X kind of in quick succession. I think probably again catapulted her into like stratosphere. Really.
And then she was in obviously Scream 6, and then she did bits and pieces, but I think really Wednesday. Between kind of Scream X and Wednesday,
and because she's in that whole season as a main character.
I think
it's a television instead of movies.
That's what put her into the kind of things of Scream can hire her, but then Scream and that.
I think the memeability of Wednesday helps, doesn't it? I mean, that dance went proper. Proper.
I mean, also the first season of Wednesday isn't bad. It is very Netflix, but it's also not awful. Amazingly enough, also Tim Burton.
Yeah, which I presume is that they had such a good time working together. Hey, do you want to come be Winona Ryder's daughter?
By the way, did either of you see Miller's Girl?
No.
Yeah, don't bother.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. And she's winter, spring, summer, or fall apparently has had its premiere, but it's not been released properly yet. So it was screened at Tribeca. So she's. It's quite funny the fact that in like 4 or 5 years she's gone to doing bits and pieces to like Hollywood A-list and now kind of horror, essentially a new Scream queen kind of thing.
Gen Z Scream. There's
Gen Z there. Scream. Yeah.
Scream.
Yeah. She literally is a Scream queen at this point, but no longer working on Scream 7 because Melissa Barrera decided to go that Israel were bombing people and this is wrong, and Hollywood went, we're going to get rid of you. And then Jenna Ortega went, I'm in support of that. And then she mysteriously vanished from the cast, even though they were like, oh no, it's conflicting with her Wednesday scheduling. It's like, realistically, you'd reschedule in order to keep Jenna Ortega in your movie. Like, this is how it works. Now she is like proper, pretty much A-list as near as you can get now, bankable star. Especially in the horror world, and you're going to keep her in because she's the main character in the new Screams. Anyway, Scream 2022. I did the review for this and gave it a 15 out of 24. I'd probably actually up that now to sort of 16 or 17 out of 24. I think I was slightly harsh on it back in the day. When I first reviewed it, and now that I've seen it again once or twice since, I would probably up it. But there we are. That's what it is. It is the 5th film, even though it's called Scream. It is the 5th Scream film, so I call it Scream 5. I don't care what anyone else says. It's Scream 5, and I'm slightly upset.
Do you not call it 5 Cream?
Yeah, I'm slightly upset they didn't stylize it like that, like they did Scriform. And like. The reason they called it Scream was because of Halloween, just calling itself Halloween. Well, pretty much nobody else did that. It's just Halloween, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna do that."
On the poster, it is Scream. There's a V within the M. Scream.
I think it depends which poster you're seeing. And some of those posters are good. Admittedly, there's the one for Scream 6 before they brought it out. I mean, the one that everyone knows is where kind of the knife turns into kind of the towers in New York, I think it is. Again, I've seen Scream 6 all the way through once. Not the biggest fan of that one. But Scream 6, one of the posters before they did it, they had it on the New York subway. And they did it in 6 different colors for the 6 different films, and it all made a ghost face thing. And they had the stops for all the characters that have been killed off, and it's like, that's cool and fun and inventive. And why don't more people do that? Anyway, Scream 5.
I didn't know her last name was Carpenter in these movies, by the way.
Yeah, guess what? That's a tribute to
Sabrina.
No. Yes, obviously. So it's the 5th Scream film, but it's cast in the film as a requel. So it's you can't just do a straight remake, but you can't just do a straight sequel. So it's somewhere in the middle. It's a legacy sequel essentially.
As the replacement Randy character helpfully points out to us.
Yes, who is Mindy, who is Randy's niece. In it, which is a nice way to get that back. Strangely enough, the best cameo I think I've seen in it, because as you're seeing it, is they finally acknowledge Dewey that Tatum was his sister who has been brutally murdered, and they kind of Dewey never brings this up, but in his little trailer, he's got a little Tatum shrine there.
I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, exactly. This is one of the things that everyone was like, why is Dewey not more shocked at finding his sister's body brutally mangled in the first one? He just kind of has a little shock and then runs away.
Yeah, remind me, was Tatum Rose McGowan?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, she was Rose McGowan. And then Drew Barrymore was Casey Becker at the beginning that gets killed off. She was originally going to be Sydney. But anyway, so yeah, there's a new spate of Ghostface killings, and they attack Jenna Ortega's character. So she's in the cold open, and it's very much she likes horror movies, but she's not a slasher fan. She's more into elevated horror. This is where we disagree, and where I actually agree with the killers at this point.
I'm gonna just clip that.
I hate the idea. She's like, oh, the horror movies where they actually have subtext and they're not just people jumping out and stabbing you. I'm like, you do realize those movies also have subtext and metaphors, and like you don't have to be pretentious to have metaphors.
Let's be fair, that's a poorly elucidated way of explaining that. You know what she means.
Yes, but other people will still use elevated horror to essentially be snobbish. And it's like, sod off, I don't care. Yeah, so she gets attacked, and then her sister, who is Melissa Barrera's character, Sam Carpenter, gets a call up. Your sister's been attacked. Come back to Woodsboro. And she comes back and gets attacked, and they go to Dewey, who's still there, who calls in Nev Campbell, Sydney, and Gail Weathers, which is Courtney Cox. And they all come in so the old crew get together to try and help a new cast of killers fight off Ghostface.
It's very much a Force Awakens kind of vibe, isn't it? It's like the old crew and the new crew teaming up.
Yep,
to basically do the same story as the original.
Yeah, you've got Halloween where you got your new ones and your old ones coming back in. I assume that the new I Know What You're Going to Do Last Summer is trying to do the same thing. This is kind of how you do it, and this is what they're talking about with legacy sequels. So you have your old cast and your new cast come together. You can kill off the new ones, because that's how you show that you can do that, and that you're not just doing a cash in. You're trying to do something new, even though it's a cash in.
It's a new cash in.
Yeah, it's a new way of disguising the fact that you have a bankable commodity that you are bringing out to get some more money in. And you run on with stuff like that. There's some fun, interesting stuff, like the fact that obviously Wes Craven, who had directed the previous 4 films, had died in the interim between Scream 4 and this one. So they've got a character called Wes, and they have a big for Wes banner at one point as well, which is a subtle nod to thank you, Wes Craven. I don't think Kevin Williamson was actually I think he was executive producer. Kevin Williamson, who wrote and created Scream, who wrote the first one,
and Dawson's Creek,
and I Know What You Did Last Summer, along with many other things. That was one of my favorite things. That in 1997 he wrote Scream 2 and I Know What You Did Last Summer, and killed off Sarah Michelle Gellar in both of them. 2 meta horror slashes written by the same guy, and the same person dies in them. I wonder if there's a connection. Yeah,
did he even work on Buffy? I don't think he did.
Kevin Williamson, no. Yeah. But he's the kind of person that probably would have done.
I forgot he did Vampire Diaries too.
Yeah, like Kevin Williamson just came out and just started like. He came in and then you go, okay, this is a Kevin Williamson product. Okay, he also did the Faculty as well.
Time to get meta.
He also did the Faculty as well, which is essentially the teen version of the Thing. With it's got Elijah Wood in it, hasn't it? It's actually quite a good movie from what I remember. Some really cool kind of almost like a drug.
I always forget that's Robert Rodriguez. It doesn't seem like one of his movies.
And again, what does seem like a Robert Rodriguez movie, I'd say that it's just a Quentin Tarantino movie that's not done by Quentin Tarantino. Anyway, yeah, it's an enjoyable movie. It's a fun movie. I think it's kind of third best in the franchise. I mean, Scream 4 was the first horror movie I saw in cinema, so I've got a place in my heart for it. But it's also, I think, the best of the sequels. It tries to do something different, and also Kirby is in it, and so when she comes back, I was very happy that Kirby survived. Justice for Kirby. Like Hayden Fatner is great, and there's just stuff in there that I really do like. This one is still solid. It draws far too much on the original, but that's kind of the point. It draws far too much, but doesn't try to do anything new with it. Which is my point that I think I put in my review for the film magazine at the time. It was like, we've already had this movie. It was Scream 4. And I think that was very much in my head when I reviewed it. Like, it's essentially like a remake of Scream, but like, we did that movie. It was called Scream 4. What is new actually about this? It's still incredibly solid. There's some great kills. There's some great lighting in there. That's interesting. I've got theories on that. Ghostface feels like Ghostface, because Scream 3 was quite bloodless. Essentially, they were trying to get the rating down to get some more money in, so they actually cut out a lot of the blood in Scream 3. Scream 4 went.
Is that the one where they cut out Courtney Cox's bangs as well, or is that 2?
Probably both of them. Admittedly, Scream 3 had very troubled production because like Nev Campbell wasn't available for a lot of it. They were changing kind of scripts as they went, essentially, to try and hide who the killers were, and people were stealing scripts and they had to keep rewriting it. Kevin Williamson wasn't available for a lot of it, so it's very hodgepodge. This one, you can tell it's got new directors and a kind of new vision behind it, and new writers. James Vanderbilt and Guy Busick were in charge of this, but they kind of wrote Ready or Not as well, which was the
directing team, Radio Silence, as known. Yeah, they're basically the cool kids on the block at the minute regarding horror films. I mean, between this Ready or Not and Abigail this year, it's they're interesting filmmakers. And I think they've definitely got a brand, but
they're the new kind of dynamic, tongue-in-cheek things. And the kind of the more serious but twisted original version is Christopher Landon, which is why when they announced Christopher Landon for Scream 7 originally, I'm like, that's actually, if you're going to pick anyone at the moment, he was probably the person to do it. And now he's left the project, and they've got Kevin Williamson to direct because they're like, we need everything we can to make this work now. It won't, but hey, this is what it is. Yeah, Scream 6 is really good, and obviously Jenna Ortega in it is actually one of the better parts of Scream 6. She's very good in this movie.
Scream 5, you mean?
Yeah.
I thought you meant
she's
Scream
in at this
6.
point. She's good. She's good in that one as well. Throws a punch or two. But she's very good in this one as well. Has to, considering that she spends most of the time in a wheelchair. And her cold open is good. I question. Jacob, you live in the US.
Allegedly.
A lot of allegedly, yeah. You could live in Bangladesh for all we know. Do a lot of houses have like remote control from like apps, electronic door locks? Is that a thing now?
It's not common among the normal middle class. Like we usually just manually lock our doors.
Because it seems like the most stupid kind of. Like, even people in The Purge wouldn't do that.
Like people have, voice activated Amazon like lights or stuff like that. But
but
most people's door locks are manual.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, Alexa starting your music up and stuff is fine. They did that in the cold open for the first episode of the Scream series, but this like has a whole thing where it's like a wall where she's trying to use her phone to lock the door, and it's like, door unlocked, lock the door, door locked, door unlocked. It's like,
that would make more sense for the car.
Idea? Yeah, like, who thought this was a good idea for your house? Like, is this the only lock you have controlled by a phone? Like, do you know phones? Like, this is ridiculous. What happens?
My Wi-Fi is not working.
Well, what happens in a power cut? Are you stuck with an unlocked door or stuck with a locked door? Because both are quite bad.
Like, when it gets to the point in Scream 10 where they have to recreate this opening, they will do a thing where they'll just cut the power. And it's just like, oh, you can't do that anymore. We've seen this movie before.
Watch 5 ads to unlock your front door. That'll.
Oh my god! Yes. I'm now going to work that in. Where you collect like 10 coins, you use 2 coins to keep your door locked, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That is obviously the way it's going. Yeah. I will also admit, it does have one of my favorite Ghostface reveals.
It's good.
Where
Wait,
goes...
do you mean the killers or when Ghostface first shows up in the movie?
Not when Ghostface first shows up in the movie. The killer reveal.
Yeah, it's very killer reveal in every way that the one in 6 kind of sucks, you know.
Yeah. This one just I like it because they just go off the wall. Sod it. Let's just. Everyone's expecting a pull off, and this actually doesn't. Okay. In the first one, it's quite funny that the first person in a ghost in a Scream movie to actually take physically take the mask off, admittedly, is actually Principal Hembry. But then after that, it's Nev Sydney right at the end where she dresses up in Ghostface and attacks Billy. Because in the first one, the 2 killers, Billy and Stu, don't actually take the mask off. Everybody else since that did that until one of the killers in the second series of the Scream TV series. Because I counted. But then that's technically the Brandon James mask. Anyway, in this one, they don't actually take the mask off as well, which is a nice little callback. It could be one, it could be multiple, who knows?
We won't spoil the actual killers because
no.
Oh, I was gonna ask who it was, but never mind. I've already forgotten.
One thing should we talk about the other big spoiler in this? If we're not going to talk about the killer, should we talk about the other major thing?
Spoiler alert! Okay, let's go.
Okay, so Dewey dies in this after surviving. It's a running gag that he survives multiple mortal injuries, like pretty much.
And recovers when he has a limp in one and now doesn't have a limp.
Stabbed by Kylo Ren. I remember that scene.
Yeah, he finally does die.
Yeah.
I mean, before this came out, I was predicting that Sydney might die. Personally, of the 3, I thought she was the most likely to. But,
I mean, she wasn't in Scream 6, so she might as well have done. Because they didn't offer her enough money to come back, and she went, I literally run the franchise, mate. Yeah. So, do you want me back or not? And they went, we got this amount of money.
I mean, were you shocked by that when you first saw it?
Here's the thing. The trouble is, nobody is happy with franchise movies. If you get all the original cast back, they're like, why aren't you doing anything new? If you have all original cast members, they're like, oh, we actually want these characters. You do bits and pieces, they're not happy about that. Like, you're never 100% happy. I reckon, I mean, my personal take is that, the movie I actually want is they obviously need to dig into multiverse movies, like, obviously, Spider-Man and like The Flash is doing and all these crossover things, and get kind of as much of the original cast of all these movies and then the cast of the TV series to pair up. Because I want the TV series third act that they cancelled. I need it back. Her not coming back, I wasn't 100%.
The one I want is one of the protagonists turning out to be Ghostface this time. That's the
either. Well, I mean, I reckon that I want a surprise Roman Bridger. He was alive the whole time, because the whole point of Scream 3 is there's a bit at the end where the door kind of swings open and Neve kind of smiles as they walk off right at the end. But if you're bringing Patrick Dempsey back as well, that's another Scream 3 tie-in. Obviously, Nev's coming back. Courtney Cox is going to be there. I want Roman Bridger to be back. That's the other thing that annoys me about this movie is the amount of emphasis on it all started with Billy and Stu. It's all Billy and Stu's thing. I'm like, have you not seen your own movies? Scream 3 literally got rid of that. Although I do think from that there is obviously a thing that the whole thing of Roman being related to Sydney was only explained to her face to face. So if she doesn't tell anyone why he's gone mad and snapped and killed people, then nobody's going to know. So I actually think it was kind of she kept it a secret, and so everyone just assumes it was Billy. But at the same time, like, that doesn't explain why the films lean so heavily into it. Oh, I know why. It's because fan service, but that's not the point. But aside from that, it's a solid film, solid entry of the franchise. It's better of the 2 ones that have come out recently.
And Jenna Ortega and Pereira are two of the best things about it. So
yes, they are.
They've got very, very, very compelling and believable kind of sibling chemistry. So.
Yeah, even if by the end Jenna Ortega still prefers the Babadook, which is just genuinely one of my favorite lines. She's like bang with the gun, and you have to give the hero the wisecrack, and that's her wisecrack is I still prefer the Babadook.
And let's be honest, both Wednesday Addams and the daughter of Lydia Dietz would also prefer the Babadook. So.
Yeah. So yeah, Jenna Ortega is great in that, and that was only 2 years ago. So
yeah,
who knows what she's going to do?
I cannot believe that, to be honest. It feels so much longer ago somehow.
Yeah, it feels like she's been around for about 10 years. But I mean, if You was where she came to stardom, realistically, or when people started picking up on her, You season 2 was kind of 5 years ago.
I suppose pandemic time has kind of done weird things to space-time continuum. So everything in that kind of early 2020s kind of era is a bit strange.
Yeah, so that was 2022. So she's done Scream since then. X is, I think, between Scream, X, and You.
I don't remember her being an X. Like, that's the crazy thing. I remember the blonde girl from John Tucker Must Die.
Yeah. So she's the timid sound recordist who decides on a whim to, do one of the scenes herself. Star in one of the scenes.
I can't remember much about X. I remember liking it more than Pearl. I haven't seen Maxine, but I remember going, "Oh, this is who I'm actually watching it for."
I've seen all three now, and I do really like Pearl, but X is easily the strongest of the trilogy.
It's just like, oh, we're gonna have fun with this, and not do anything with it. Oh, we're gonna have fun anyway. Jenna Ortega is great, and she's 21. We've got plenty more years of her.
Yeah.
Doing weird stuff, and I think
God, we hope.
At the top of Hollywood for a while.
Don't speak too soon.
Yeah, she will be there for a while. She'll probably have a dip at some point, mid-30s, and then come back again with a career resurgence because she's a female in Hollywood, and that's what happens.
Because Winona Ryder was, famous young. Of course, there's a little section on her Wikipedia that's like theft arrest in 2002 or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Winona Ryder did have the massive dip, and then she did a couple of bits and came back, and then, I mean, she'd been in big stuff, but realistically, with Winona Ryder, Stranger Things kind of brought her back into public prominence. And I do wonder, actually, if they would have done Beetlejuice had Winona Ryder not been held back up to a bankable commodity with Stranger Things.
It depends on how much money the spreadsheet said that the movie would make.
I mean, of course, the other returning player none of us covered was Catherine O'Hara. Maybe needs to be a whole other episode. I think she could take an episode to herself, Catherine O'Hara.
Yeah, we will leave you in charge of that one.
Yes.
No, I'm joking. Yeah. But yeah, Scream made quite a bit of money. I got onto the radio briefly for it because it toppled Spider-Man when it came out.
Nice.
So yeah.
Cool.
We should wrap this up before we end up going for 2.5 hours.
We're only at 1.5. So.
I know, this is why we should wrap it up now.
So I guess, if you want to, go watch Beetlejuice, or be like me and don't.
We're all probably going to watch it in about 6 months' time.
Read our review.
Of the three of us, I'll probably see it soonest. I'll probably see it in a couple of weeks, so I'll report back when I have.
I was going to say, we do have somebody reviewing it, surely.
It's Margaret.
Okay, Margaret will be reviewing it. In which case, and if you're catching this a couple of days later on YouTube or anywhere else you get your podcast from, if this gets uploaded, then go check out Margaret's review sometime in the future or the past.
Yes.
The present.
We'll be back next week with another episode, but until then, where can people find you?
You can find me at SSP Thinks Film and at the Film Magazine, where I've not gotten any new writing up since last time, but I did, a few years ago, I did write a Tim Burton ranked, which obviously will be updated with Beetlejuice once I've seen it. Spoiler alert, Beetlejuice, the first one, is high on the list for me.
Is it number one? You'll have to read to find out.
Yeah, I do very much enjoy it. I will. There will be a Doctor Strangelove anniversary review up from me in a few days, and we've got a couple of other fairly big projects in the pipeline. So, watch our channels for first updates on those.
Woo, party time. And hopefully you don't find me anywhere. If you do, I'm K Judgmental in the various places. I did go and see Afraid, the new Blumhouse movie that came out recently. If you
is
want
that a new low for the site scoring, Kieran?
No, I am one of the only people that has given a 0 out of 24 on the site. Someone did it for one of the 50 Shades sequels, and I did it for Assassin Club. So it's not that low, but essentially what happened is they released Megan and decided we need more kind of cyber-tech horror cash-ins, and it's not great.
Well,
spoilers.
Kieran, you know what's fun about Afraid, or however it's pronounced? It's essentially a horror remake of the Disney Channel original movie Smart House. Everything about it is exactly the same.
Have you seen?
Except
did you
with
go
horror.
and see it?
No, I didn't, but I watched the trailer, and the trailer has everything from Smart House. The robot uses maternal instincts to kill somebody, or whatever. The robot orders healthy meals for the kids, refers to itself as their mom, and the craziest part, has a physical avatar. So
I'm probably going to say I haven't seen Smart House, but it will probably be better than Afraid was.
It's much more enjoyable, surely, because it's silly.
Yeah. Okay. So I've kind of given away that one, but I also did a retrospective of The Third Man, with Orson Welles in it.
Is that a good movie?
Yeah. It's thankfully not a bad movie, but how good it is, you'll have to read my review to find out.
Yeah, and the soundtrack will be stuck in your brain for weeks afterwards.
Yep.
The
Zither score, yeah.
Zither score, yeah. Anton
Hans Zither.
Yeah.
And you can follow me at Jacob Film Guy. I have stuff coming out later, but nothing since last time. So I'm going to tell you to go read Joe's review, our editor Joseph Wade, his review of Sing Sing. That's from Greg Quedar. I don't know how to say his name. But it's a movie, I'm guessing, about the New York prison Sing Sing. I think it's for like crazy people.
I think I saw a trailer for it.
It's Commons Mingo, starring with a lot of real incarcerated people turned actors, basically. So
that's sick.
Playing versions of himself in this acting program in the prison. Yeah, it sounds really good.
Well, then watch that movie too, apparently. And then Joe also wrote Where to Start with Noah Baumbach. So if you want to know where to start with Noah Baumbach, read that. You can, down in the description, buy our merch, our Redbubble store. Or if you just want to give us money without any goods or services, you can do that at the PayPal. Like, subscribe, give 5-star reviews, I don't know, whatever else you're supposed to say to
all of it.
Get the algorithm to like you. Leave a comment. Clickbait, I don't know. I don't think we say anything else. So that's it. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Adios.
Goodbye.